I'm not cutting off my ex just because you're insecure, Lucas. That was the sentence, sharp, dismissive, almost bored, that split my life cleanly into a before and an after. And I remember standing there in our Seattle apartment, holding a mug of cold coffee, watching Marissa say it like she was reminding me to take out the trash. No hesitation, no second thought. Just a line drawn in a place I never agreed to. My name is Lucas Hale, 29, software architect for a tech firm that loved moving its talent across continents. And for 3 years, I had built my life around Marissa Carter, 27, brilliant marketer, magnetic personality, the sort of woman people orbit without knowing why. We lived together for almost 2 years. 2 years of shared groceries, shared routines, shared futures, and slowly I realized shared ghosts. One ghost in particular, Caleb Warren. Her ex. The thing people don't tell you about emotional erosion is that it doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives as a drip. A text here, a call there, a sudden change of plans because Caleb's having a rough day. I told myself not to At first, it felt noble to trust her. But trust isn't noble if you're giving it away, while someone else pockets your dignity. Caleb wasn't some occasional friend. He was a daily presence. Morning texts with heart emojis, late-night phone calls about his job stress, spontaneous meetups for coffee because he needed support. The first year, I swallowed my confusion. The second year, I swallowed my hurt. By the third, I was swallowing whole pieces of my future. Because here's what most people don't know. I had already sacrificed promotions for her. The London Post had been my dream. Since university, leading a development team. 6-figure salary. Corner office overlooking Canary Wharf. I told Marissa about it with this naive expectation she'd light up and say, "Let's go." Instead, she frowned, said Caleb had just gone through a bad breakup and she couldn't leave him like this. I remember laughing, not because it was funny, because my brain refused to process what my ears were hearing. But I let it go. I told myself timing was bad. I told myself love was about compromise. And then, a year later, when the London chance came again, this time, even better, her answer was the same. Caleb was struggling with anxiety in a new relationship. He needed her stability. And again, I turned it down. One night, after she dismissed my concerns with a tired sigh, I found myself staring at our living room window. The lights of Seattle reflected like fractured stars. I wondered if I was being unreasonable, if I was really as jealous and controlling as she insisted. She was so confident in her narrative that I started believing it. I started shrinking myself to fit the shape she needed me to be, while she expanded all the space Caleb occupied. But deep down, something was unraveling. Threads of resentment, pulled one by one. My friend Aaron at work once told me, "Man, my wife talks to her ex maybe twice a year, and that's because of custody stuff. What you've got is something else." My sister Laurel put it more bluntly. "Lucas, she's keeping him as emotional insurance. A backup generator for validation." I hated how right they sounded. 3 months ago, the third London offer came. The final one. My boss sat me down, exasperated, and said, "Lucas, this is the last time I can push for you. If you decline again, I'm giving the seat to someone else." Those words burned, not because of the ultimatum, but because of the truth hidden inside it. I was about to lose the future I had worked my entire adult life for. That night, I walked into our apartment ready to finally talk about the imbalance that had been poisoning us. But Marissa was on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, whispering urgently, her face tight with concern. For him. Always for him. She held up a finger just a minute as if my presence was an interruption. She sat there comforting another man about his relationship drama, while I, her partner, stood in the doorway holding a conversation we would never get to have. Something cracked inside me then, quietly, without fireworks, without screaming, just a small, final fracture. Because sometimes you don't realize you're drowning until you finally stop kicking. While she murmured, "I'll always be here for you, okay? You can count on me," I realized the truth. She had already chosen who she belonged to, and it wasn't me, so I made a choice to. I didn't tell her. I didn't argue. I didn't defend my worth anymore. The next morning, while she was still asleep, wrapped in the same calm I no longer recognized, I stepped into my small office, closed the door, called my boss, and accepted the London promotion. No discussion, no permission, no more waiting for her to choose me. She had her priorities now, finally. I had mine, and that decision, quiet, small, simple, was the beginning of the end neither of us saw coming. Marissa found out about London 3 days later, not from me, but from the moving crew. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where Seattle drizzle hangs like a curtain outside your window. I was packing the last of my office boxes when the doorbell rang. She was still in bed. I opened the door to find a Packers relocation team, 3 guys in dark green uniforms, clipboards in hand, ready to haul my life across an ocean. Marissa stumbled out of the hallway, hair messy, eyes half awake. "Lucas, who are these people?" I didn't answer immediately. Not to be dramatic. I just wanted to choose my words carefully, the way a surgeon chooses where to cut. "They're here," I said, "to pack for London." Her face froze, then contorted with disbelief. "London? What do you mean? You didn't tell me you were accepting that job." I nodded, calm, measured, not a tremor in my voice. "I did, yesterday, actually." The day before. She blinked hard, like she was trying to wake up from a dream she didn't like. "Why would you accept it without talking to me?" There it was. The line she thought she had a right to say. The line that used to stop me. But not anymore. "I didn't think my career should depend," I said quietly, "on your ex's emotional weather." Her jaw tightened. "Lucas, that's not fair. You know Caleb needs stability." "No," I cut in, "you need him. And that's fine. But I'm done rearranging my life around the man you're not with. But emotionally treat like you still are." Her eyes flashed wounded anger. Not guilt. Not introspection. Just indignation. "How dare you say that? He's just a friend. A close friend. You're blowing this out of proportion." I exhaled slowly. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, but the real version felt strangely hollow. "Marissa, I offered you 3 years of patience. I let your boundaries become my chains. I turned down London twice. I've been understanding about the calls at midnight, the texts during our dinners, the emergency meetups that always seemed to matter more than our relationship. You kept choosing him. I'm just choosing myself now." She crossed her arms, shaking her head. "This is insane. You're abandoning our life because you're jealous." "Then let's entertain that," I said. "If I'm jealous, why was I the one compromising for years? Why were you the one comforting another man at 2 a.m.? Why did he get your emotional devotion, not me?" She looked away. "Caleb needs me." And for the first time, I finally answered the way I should have years ago. So did I. Silence filled the apartment, heavy, oppressive. One of the packer's guys cleared his throat awkwardly and asked where to start packing. I pointed them to the bedroom and stepped aside. Marissa sank onto the couch, fingers trembling. "Lucas, you can't just go. This is your home. I'm your partner. I'm your placeholder," I said. "Your backup. Maybe even your emotional bodyguard. But I'm not your partner, not in any way that matters." Her voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do? You're just leaving." "I'm not just leaving," I said softly. "I'm stepping out of a triangle I never agreed to join." She pressed her hands to her forehead. "Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy?" I almost laughed bitterly. I did. 100 times. You told me I was insecure. You convinced me I was the problem. And for a long time, I believed you. But here's the truth. I wasn't jealous of Caleb. I was jealous of how effortlessly you gave him what I had to earn. She didn't respond. The packers moved around us, boxing up traces of a life that had expired months before either of us admitted it. The sound of tape sealing cardboard echoed like a slow, dull heartbeat. Finally, Marissa whispered, "So that's it? You're not even asking me to come with you?" I looked at the woman I loved, the woman I defended, the woman I compromised for until I barely recognized myself. "Would you?" I asked. Her silence was my answer. I turned away to sign the moving forms. It felt like signing a release order for my own freedom. When the last box was loaded, I grabbed my suitcase from the hallway. Marissa stood by the door, eyes wet, lips trembling. Not a single word left in her. "Goodbye, Marissa," I said gently. She reached out as if to touch my arm, then let her hand fall. "Please don't do this," she whispered. "I already did." I walked out. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet. I heard our door close behind me soft final, for the first time in 3 years. I felt weightless, not happy, not relieved, just free. The next morning, I boarded a flight from Seattle to Heathrow. No farewell, no drama. Just a one-way ticket, one suitcase, and 12 hours of stillness to understand a truth I had ignored for too long. Love doesn't vanish in an explosion. It starves in silence. And I had been starving for years. London greeted me with cold rain and a new office overlooking the Thames. My boss shook my hand, told me I made the right call. My colleagues welcomed me like I was a missing piece they'd been waiting for. And at night, in my new flat, overlooking a city that didn't know my history, I finally allowed myself to breathe. No texts from Caleb, no excuses, no more sharing the person I loved with someone she couldn't let go. But actions create aftershocks, and I had no idea that back in Seattle, Marissa was about to unleash hers. Her mother stared at the screenshot like it was a verdict. I could see the moment her expression fractured shame first, then fury, then something heavier. A recognition that this wasn't just a bad moment from her daughter. This was a pattern she had refused to confront. She lifted her eyes to me. "She sent this during your father's funeral." I nodded, "And you didn't answer her?" "I didn't need to," I replied quietly. "I just needed someone else to see it." Her mother pressed the screenshot to her chest as if it burned her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve this." But apology wasn't what I came for. I simply said, "I know," because the truth was bigger than the text message. It wasn't just disrespect. It was the culmination of every subtle dismissal, every eye roll when my family came up, every time she treated my father's illness like an inconvenience instead of a tragedy. That message was the final crack in a foundation I had been patching for years. Her mother exhaled sharply, as if bracing herself. "I'll handle it," she said. But I didn't want it handled. I wanted the truth exposed to her family, to myself, because silent revenge isn't about retaliation, it's about clarity. She, my girlfriend, finally came home later that night, halfway through laughing at something her friend said on the phone. She didn't even notice me packing the last of my things at first. But when she did, her face froze. "What are you doing?" I held up my phone. "I believe you already answered that for me today." She paled instantly. She knew exactly what message I meant. "You're seriously upset about that?" she snapped. I was stressed. My friends were waiting, and your family drama was dragging on. I didn't mean anything. I stared at her, stunned by how effortlessly she minimized everything. My father's funeral wasn't drama. It was the last thing I'll ever do for him. She crossed her arms. "Okay, but you could have at least grabbed pizza. You knew I had people over." That was the moment something inside me switched off. Not rage, not heartbreak. Distance, clean. Sharp, irreversible distance. "I forwarded your text to your mother," I said. Her mouth fell open. "You did what?" She deserved to know the kind of person her daughter is becoming. She rushed toward me, grabbing my arm, her voice cracking. "Why would you do that? She's going to crucify me." I looked her in the eyes finally. Seeing her clearly, she should. Her phone began buzzing, relentlessly calls, messages, notifications, stacking faster than she could swipe them away. Her mother wasn't waiting. She was detonating. My ex collapsed on the couch, trembling. "You ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I said calmly. "You did." I zipped the last bag, walked toward the door, and paused not to hurt her, but to give her the truth she had earned. "You asked if my father's funeral could wait," I said. "But here's the irony. This conversation, this moment, this breakup, it couldn't." I left without slamming the door. Silent revenge never needs volume, just clarity and exit. As I stepped out onto the cold, late evening street, a strange calm settled over me. The grief for my father was still there, heavy but honest, but the weight of her, gone, lifted like smoke. And behind me, through the thin apartment walls, I could hear her mother's voice rising not in anger alone, but in something closer to accountability, maybe even justice. Act I was over. The fracture had happened, and what followed next would reshape every truth she thought she controlled. Asterisk, I thought walking out would be the end of it. But silent revenge doesn't stop at the exit door. It keeps echoing through family, through reputation, through every unspoken truth someone has avoided for too long. The next morning, I woke to 8 missed calls from her mother and one text. "You were right. There's more you need to know." I hesitated before replying. Part of me wanted to leave everything behind, to cut the cord cleanly. But another part, the part that had been dismissed, minimized, talked over for years, needed closure, not avoidance. We met at a small cafe near her office. She looked exhausted, like she had aged 5 years overnight. She didn't sleep, her mother said immediately. I didn't let her. I wasn't sure I wanted details, but she continued anyway. She told me everything. Or rather, she tried. But every excuse she made only dug her deeper. I stayed quiet. Silence, I had learned, is sometimes the most honest form of pressure. Her mother pulled out her phone. "You should see this." It was a string of messages my ex sent to her friends the same day as my father's funeral. Screenshots, complaints, mocking the service, calling it boring, saying she wished I'd get over it already. That last line hit harder than I expected. Get over it, my father, my grief. Her mother watched my expression twist, and her voice softened. I don't know why she became this way, but I'm not covering for her anymore. She slid her phone back into her purse. You deserve someone who respects your sorrow. She treated it like a parking ticket. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, but before I could respond, her mother leaned in, and there's something else. Her tone sharpened, the kind that precedes revelation. She told her friends you were too emotional about your father, that you were making it about yourself. I closed my eyes briefly. There are moments when anger isn't loud, it's quiet, compressed, razor thin, and this was one of them. Her mother continued. She needs a wake-up call, a real one. She won't learn from humiliation alone. I opened my eyes. What are you suggesting? She needs consequences, her mother said plainly, not to punish her, but to change her. I shook my head. That's not my responsibility. No, she agreed, it isn't. But what you choose to do next will define whether she grows or breaks, and whether you heal or carry bitterness. I appreciated her honesty, but consequences were already unfolding without any guidance from me, because by afternoon, the story had spread further than either of us expected. Her aunt called me, apologizing. Her cousin sent me a long message about how she'd always been entitled, but never this cruel. Her brother, who I rarely spoke to, left a voicemail that ended with, "I'm sorry, man." She crossed a line none of us can defend. By evening, she texted, "Can we please talk?" For words that once could have pulled me back without effort, now, they barely stirred anything. I didn't answer, not out of spite, but because Act 2 isn't about confrontation, it's about revelation, about letting consequences ripple naturally, without trying to direct them. That night, her best friend reached out, a woman who had always been neutral, toward me. "Just so you know," she wrote. "She told everyone you were overreacting. Now that the screenshot is out, people aren't siding with her. She's spiraling." Again, I didn't reply. Instead, I sat in my quiet apartment, newly reclaimed, strangely peaceful, and let the silence settle. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for protecting myself. Meanwhile, her world built on image, convenience, and avoidance was cracking. Not because I attacked it, but because the truth finally had room to breathe. And as her social circle shifted, as her family confronted her, as she sat alone with the consequences she created, realized something important. Grief doesn't just reveal who comforts you, it reveals who never intended to act. 2 wasn't about revenge at all, it was about clarity. But Act 3 would bring something she never expected: accountability, finality, and the moment she realized I wasn't coming back. I landed in London with a strange sense of liberation. The plane touched down at Heathrow, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel tethered to anyone but myself. The city smelled like possibility, damp cobblestones, fresh rain, and diesel from buses, but, more than that, it smelled like freedom. I moved into a flat in Canary Wharf that overlooked the Thames. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern kitchen, a living space that didn't belong to anyone but me. And for the first time, I unpacked my life without hesitation, without guilt. Each book I placed, each photo I set down, was a declaration. I was reclaiming myself, one action at a time. Meanwhile, back in Seattle, the ripples of my decision were exploding. Her friends, her family, even her co-workers, everyone she relied upon as a validation, network were seeing the truth through the cracks she couldn't hide. Texts, calls, messages, they all started coming. And she, once so confident, once so unyielding, had nowhere to retreat. I received one particularly revealing message from her mother, Lucas. She called me last night. She's realizing what she lost. I don't think she's ever been this vulnerable. I didn't respond. Vulnerability was earned, not demanded, and I wasn't there to teach her lessons. The universe, it seemed, was doing that job with surgical precision. 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected email from her. The subject line read simply, "Can we talk?" I smiled faintly. It was almost funny. The same 4 words that once could bend me to her will now read like a faint echo of something I used to be. A version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. I drafted a reply, then deleted it. I wouldn't go back. Not after 3 years of sacrificing dreams, opportunities, and emotional stability. Not after she had chosen everyone else but me, repeatedly, over and over. London became my proving ground. 6 months after moving, I was promoted to senior engineer. My team admired my vision, my boss relied on my leadership, and every project I touched thrummed with excitement and growth. I finally felt what it meant to be all in somewhere, not tethered to someone else's drama, not negotiating my worth for scraps of attention. And then came Emma. She was 28. A product manager at a fintech startup. Brilliant, kind, and most importantly, respectful. She never required explanations for boundaries, never demanded my time at the expense of her own. Her past was her own. Her priorities aligned naturally with mine. Meeting her, I realized how foreign it felt to have a partner who simply chose me. The contrast between Emma and Marissa was stark. One night, Emma mentioned her ex wanted coffee while he was in town. My response? Simple, firm. I'm in a relationship, and you're important to me. I don't need closure with someone from my past when I'm building a future with you. No guilt. No negotiation. No compromise that left me smaller. As for Marissa, the fallout continued to unfold without my intervention. Word reached me that Caleb, her emotional crutch, her substitute for intimacy, disappeared within 3 weeks of my departure. He realized the chase ended when the prize was gone. Marissa's career began to suffer. She had missed promotions and her work performance faltered. Financial stress mounted as she tried to cover expenses I had previously split, and eventually she returned to her parents' home. 6 months later, she reached out. Long email, apologetic, reflective. She spoke of therapy, boundaries, learning to prioritize commitment. She even expressed interest in visiting London. I read the email once, then archived it. My life had moved forward, and there was no space left for someone who had repeatedly refused to do the same. I continued building my life with Emma. We met my family via video calls. She became part of my world in a way Marissa never could. The lessons were clear. Love isn't about asking for permission to live. It isn't about compromising endlessly for someone who refuses to respect your boundaries. It's about mutual respect, shared priorities, and the courage to choose one another every single day. Marissa's world, once defined by manipulation, choices deferred. An emotional triangulation became a cautionary tale story I would remember not with anger but with relief. Relief that I had chosen me. Relief that my dreams were no longer hostage to someone else's indecision. And relief that I finally knew the difference between sacrifice and surrender. Silent revenge isn't about public humiliation. It isn't about punishment. It's about reclaiming your life, standing in clarity, and letting consequences unfold naturally. When she called months later, desperate to reconnect, I said only this: "I'm glad you've learned what boundaries and priorities mean, but I've already moved on. My life is here, with people who choose me without hesitation. I hope you find peace in learning to choose wisely yourself." And with that, I closed the chapter completely. London became more than a city. It became a symbol of agency, freedom, and the life I was always meant to lead. Emma and I found a rhythm, a partnership built on respect and mutual trust. Each day reinforced the lesson: you don't wait for people to choose, you build a life with those who already do. Some opportunities are fleeting, some people are transient, but clarity once achieved is permanent. And that, I realized, was the ultimate revenge.